All right. So next caller, Jason. You are on with Ethan and Jenna and our lovely guests. How you doing?
What's up, man?
Not much. How are you?
Long time listener, first time caller.
Awesome. Well,
Hi.
thanks for calling
Uh,
in. What did you have to ask?
Yeah, well, so I work with senior citizens, and I have this theory, and I'm wondering why it isn't thought about more. So when I work with Alzheimer's patients and they are having, let's say, a rough time at their nursing home or memory care facility, and they get sent to the hospital, oftentimes they come back worse.
Yeah.
And everyone's just kind of like, oh, I don't know why. Like, oh, man, that stinks. And I believe it's because of bedside manner. It's pretty simple, but I'm going to kind of give a visual. And I don't know, Ethan, if you can pull up Maslow's hierarchy, a picture of it. But basically, for those that don't know, it's a pyramid of order of operation on how clinical staff take care of a patient. And it goes all the way up from body to spiritual. The issue is the spiritual is at the top, and the soul and the mind and all of the cognitive pieces. So it's thought of last usually. But if we flipped it and gave a holistic care plan where you actually had a behavioral team that's job was to treat the Maslow's hierarchy in reverse and basically create a diamond instead of a pyramid, you have a holistic care plan that is able to prepare someone who had to go to the hospital, let's say for a UTI or something simple like that. And you could have this behavioral team that's there for the transition piece, because that's the most detrimental thing. And I can pretty much prove that, not just with seniors, but with everybody. Like, when something major changes in your life, it feels traumatic. We've been taught that change is traumatic, and yet it's the constant. And so we're not, I mean, yes, there's an issue with mental health in general in the world, but why is it that healthcare has such a hard time buying in to the idea, and just, your opinions, to the idea that the behavioral piece is important, but not as important? And what steps that you maybe are aware of that you see that it's maybe pushing the other direction? My example in the real world would be how we're trying to demilitarize the police and create behavioral counselors and behavioral training so we can do de-escalation and crisis management better. So why aren't we able to kind of enact that in other parts of our system?
Okay, that's a lot to take in at once. Okay, so one thing that we tend to forget, especially in assisted living, is the mental health of the actual patients we take care of. Nursing homes, unfortunately, are notorious for not attending to the mental health of their seniors. They see the physical effects, like the buildup of the plaque and they will notate the behavior, but there is a dehumanizing aspect. And when someone goes to a hospital, they get poked and prodded, and they're in an unfamiliar place, and it's not pleasant for them. So it's no surprise to hear that they are worse when they come back, because they're probably miserable. Their mental faculties cognitively, they may be disrupted or impaired, but they still have human emotions, and they are not somehow completely wiped away. They're not full zombies. They still have cares. You could still see them laugh, smile, cry, etc. So their mental health, it will have an effect on their physical health and their overall cognitive abilities as well. You will see declines in that if they are unhappy.
It's true. And, when you go to a hospital, you can have your agency taken away. You have control over your environment, over your own body in a lot of ways taken away. And for people who are cognitively fragile, it just affects them negatively and in many times severely too.
Sorry, cognitively fragile. Could you define what you mean by that?
Well, for example, if you're elderly, I've worked with elderly people too. If you already have pre-existing, issues with your executive order, with your executive functions. Your executive functions live up here in the forebrain. And Daniel knows what I'm talking about. I'm sure a lot of people in the chat and here too. It's about being able to sequence events. It's about being able to think logically. And a lot of that, for those people who are cognitively fragile, are based on having a consistent environment, an environment that they feel like they have control over. They may actually care for something in their environment, like a plant or a cat. And there have been a bunch of mindfulness studies that have shown that if you have to care for something, then you will do better cognitively across the board. So you have all of that taken away from you. And once again, it's bad enough if your frontal lobes are working well, but if you're fragile, if you already have dementia, if you already have a brain injury of some kind, then yeah, that can cause a feedback loop of bad.
I do have a couple, actually follow-up questions, but instead I want to make sure first, real quick, Jason, before we let you go, did that answer your question, or did you have a quick follow-up?
Well, just, I guess, a quick follow-up. I agree with everything you just said, and what I would add to it is that I think one of the things that we're doing a disservice to is the way that we categorize where people's cognitive fragility, level is. For instance, we do cognitive tests where we say, what day of the week is it? Who's the president? And if I'm 97 and I've got Alzheimer's, that's the last thing I care about. So I'm probably not going to know. And so if I was asked more questions like, do you know any of the people that you sit with at lunch? And, the way that, because I'm ADD, I'm ADHD, neurodivergent, and I was diagnosed when I was 8. Mm-hmm. And back then it was looked at as a thing you push to the side because we really didn't know we knew what it did, but we didn't know really how to treat it. We had drugs like Ritalin, we had drugs like Concerta and Adderall, and it was doing things, but it was such a taboo. And it's very much how we used to classify Alzheimer's as senile or other cognitive dementia, progressive dementia things as senile. And now that's taboo because we know that there's a spectrum, just like autism, just like ADHD. So, do you think that if we changed how we classified people and started treating things more like these spectrums, that there might be a way to better give a personalized care plan that is holistic?
Yeah, definitely. The more individualized care, the better the person will do. That's why it's so important for caregivers, family members to be actively involved in a person's treatment at all levels. And I'll also say this.
They're just never educated. That's the issue. That's the biggest issue. The people I work with, when they leave with the diagnosis, they have no idea what to do next other than medically.
Yeah.
Well, but the problem isn't it that it's hard enough to diagnose people with what they have because these diagnoses are relatively new in general, aren't they? So to come up with enough diagnoses, and not only that, but to measure out how much on what side and how many different sides each one goes, you know what I mean? It just seems like we're just not there yet. I mean, seems like an awesome goal,
I think it can be achieved. It's funny, but there's some residents I work with that are atheists, and I've mentioned Ethan's show specifically because I think it would be refreshing for them to hear someone in their 20s, in their 30s. The people that you bring on are just kind of normal people talking about things. And one of the things that there's a conspiracy theory out there that the reason we didn't like ADD people is because we ask why. And that doesn't work well in this society. And when seniors get started to be pushed to the side, it's because they start asking why. And they start wanting to hold on to their identity and hold on to their individualism. And it starts being plucked away, as one of you said today. And then they're forced to hold on tight to whatever they have left. And then we're looking at them like they're the crazy ones. And I think that we could flip that both with getting people like Ethan and Jenna shows, and I play podcasts for them. I do a Buddhism one for them 2 times a month, and they're asking real questions, and probably for the first time in their lives. And so I feel like if we approached it like that reverse Maslow, that's really where we can give them a full care plan that is individualized, and at the same time can use some broad spectrum treatments and broad spectrum programming that can add to their daily life. So anyway, thank you for all the reassuring of my theories.
Thank you for calling.
Thanks, Jason.
It's nice talking to you.